Boa noite a todas as pessoas presentes. É com muita satisfação que iniciamos a cerimônia de abertura do Seminário Internacional de Formação em Pesquisa Qualitativa em Saúde, o desafio do letramento científico, organizado pela Rede Brasil-Canadá de Pesquisa Qualitativa em Saúde, em parceria com a Universidade Federal do Rio Grande do Sul, realizado com apoio da Coordenação de Aperfeiçoamento de Pessoal do Nível Superior, Brasil-CAPES, através do Programa de Apoio a Eventos no país. Fazem parte da mesa o vice-reitor da Universidade Federal do Rio Grande do Sul, Pedro de Almeida Costa, o diretor da Escola de Educação Física, Fisioterapia e Dança da UFRGS, professor Rogério da Cunha Voser, a coordenadora do Programa de Pós-Graduação em Ciências do Movimento Humano da UFRGS, professora Caroline Pieta Dias, a representante da Rede Brasil-Canadá e professora da Universidade de Brasília, Maria Inês Gandolfo Conceição, o coordenador-geral do evento, professor da ESEFID e do Programa de Pós-Graduação de Ciências do Movimento Humano da UFRGS, Alex Branco Fraga, e o pró-reitor adjunto de graduação da Universidade Federal de Ciências da Saúde de Porto Alegre, Rafael Maciel da Silva Cabaleiro.
Alô. Boa noite a todas e todas. Buenas noches para os hermanos dos países latino-americanos. É uma honra recebê-los no Seminário Internacional sobre treinamento, sobre educação em pesquisa qualitativa e saúde, o desafio do letramento científico, evento financiado pela CAPES e apoiado pela UFRGS. Em nome da Rede Brasil-Canadá de Pesquisa Qualitativa em Saúde, do Grupo de Políticas de Formação em Educação Física e Saúde, expresso nossa gratidão pela presença de cada um de vocês, seja presencialmente ou à distância. Este seminário estava originalmente programado para maio de 2024. No entanto, devido às enchentes devastadoras que atingiram o estado do Rio Grande do Sul, fomos obrigados a adiá-lo. Diante dessa tragédia, a UFRGS esteve à frente, de uma série de iniciativas para minimizar as perdas e o sofrimento da população mais vulnerável, tendo instalado um abrigo nas dependências da nossa Escola de Educação Física, Fisioterapia e Dança, que, no auge, chegou a contar com 650 pessoas e 80 animais. Reorganizar a nossa estrutura acadêmica e viabilizar este evento diante desse cenário não foi uma tarefa fácil. Mas, apesar dos desafios, estamos aqui, nessa cerimônia de abertura, com mais de 1.400 inscritos de diversas regiões do país e de diferentes áreas do conhecimento, reunidos para debater o processo de formação em pesquisa qualitativa crítica em saúde, sempre com o compromisso de trabalhar em prol daqueles que mais precisam. Ao longo do seminário, teremos 3 conferências com colegas de reconhecida competência de diferentes regiões do país e do mundo. Essas conferências fornecerão subsídios para os trabalhos de intercâmbio de experiências bem-sucedidas na formação de pesquisadores qualitativos em saúde e o fortalecimento de redes institucionais que vão promover a discussão, revisão e elaboração de um manifesto que já foi encaminhado para os inscritos pela excelência na formação em pesquisa qualitativa e saúde. Agradecemos imensamente a presença de cada um de vocês, seja aqui ou virtualmente, e acreditamos que somente com a força do trabalho coletivo podemos enfrentar as adversidades e avançar na construção do conhecimento. Desejamos a todos e todas um excelente evento.
O Seminário Internacional de Formação em Pesquisa Qualitativa em Saúde, o desafio do letramento científico, visa contribuir para a formação de pesquisadores e professores responsáveis pela formação de profissionais da saúde em diferentes níveis de ensino, com a expectativa de que eles sejam capazes de desenvolver projetos de ensino e de pesquisa qualitativa com rigor metodológico internacional. A pesquisa qualitativa em saúde propõe modos inovadores para investigar dimensões subjetivas da saúde e da doença, explorando aspectos sociais, culturais e institucionais que impactam as experiências humanas. O evento tem como objetivo fortalecer a formação de docentes, pesquisadoras e pesquisadores e ampliar a colaboração internacional para aprimorar metodologias críticas em saúde e fomentar redes de pesquisa que deem sustentação a políticas públicas que fortaleçam os sistemas nacionais de saúde. Para dar início às manifestações da mesa, passamos a palavra para o coordenador geral do evento.
Já foi?
Já foi, professor Alex?
Demos um pulinho no roteiro.
Obrigada, professor Alex. Convidamos para sua fala a representante da Rede Brasil-Canadá e professora da Universidade de Brasília, Maria Inês Gandolfo Conceição.
Okay. Boa noite, cumprimento a mesa na pessoa do vice-reitor e a todos os demais. Boa noite aos participantes, a quem está presencialmente online. Antes de tudo, em nome, representando aqui meus amigos da Rede, eu gostaria de expressar minha profunda gratidão aos organizadores deste evento extraordinário, em especial ao incansável Alex e a sua dedicada equipe, né? Adriane, Humberto e demais colegas que se tornaram nossos novos e queridos parceiros dessa jornada. Ser pesquisador na área qualitativa é um desafio constante, uma luta contra a corrente em um mundo que muitas vezes insiste em afirmar que apenas pesquisas quantitativas respondem aos propósitos da ciência. No entanto, todo esse esforço tem valido imensamente a pena. Ainda que sejamos poucos em um universo dominado por modelos randômicos e estatísticos, somos pesquisadores sérios, qualificados e resilientes. Esta rede nasceu da colaboração do esforço coletivo, sob liderança inspiradora de Denise Gastaldo, uma pesquisadora visionária, agregadora e acolhedora, cuja sensibilidade e compromisso foram fundamentais para a sua construção. Nosso ponto de encontro inicial foi o CQ, na Universidade de Toronto, um espaço que nos permitiu conhecer e nos encantar com a riqueza e a potência da pesquisa qualitativa. A partir daí, movidos pela vontade de manter viva essa chama vibrante e inovadora no campo da saúde, consolidamos uma rede que transcende fronteiras, impulsionada pelo desejo comum de fortalecer e qualificar a pesquisa qualitativa. Foi desse compromisso coletivo que surgiu a proposta que inicialmente foi submetida ao edital CAPES-DF-ATD em 2017, resultando, então, num projeto Pesquisa Qualitativa em Saúde no Brasil e no Canadá, estratégias metodológicas para excelência na formação de pesquisadores, na qual tive a honra de atuar como coordenadora da Rede no Brasil. Desde então, os pesquisadores fundadores dessa rede têm acolhido novos membros e se dedicado ao aprimoramento da formação de métodos qualitativos em saúde, promovendo um diálogo contínuo entre o Brasil e Canadá. Nosso objetivo é não apenas sistematizar e dar visibilidade internacional às contribuições inovadoras que emergem desses dois países, mas também identificar lacunas e propor soluções inspiradas em experiências concretas. Com este encontro, damos mais um passo importante na consolidação da rede, ampliando parcerias com pesquisadores que, como nós, seguem firmes na missão de produzir ciência qualitativa de excelência. Que este evento seja mais um marco no fortalecimento nesse campo, reafirmando nossa resistência e compromisso com uma ciência que não apenas mede, mas compreende, transforma e humaniza.
Obrigada, professora Maria Inês Gandolfo. Com a palavra, a coordenadora do Programa de Pós-Graduação em Ciências do Movimento Humano, da UFRGS, professora Caroline Pieta Dias.
Obrigada. Primeiramente, meus cumprimentos à mesa. Boa noite a todos e a todas. É com imenso prazer que iniciamos este evento, que reúne profissionais e pesquisadores dedicados ao aprimoramento e ao avanço do conhecimento científico. Como coordenadora do Programa de Pós-Graduação em Ciências do Movimento Humano da UFRGS, gostaria de ressaltar um aspecto fundamental para o nosso programa: a parceria internacional que o Grupo de Pesquisa em Políticas de Formação em Educação Física e Saúde, coordenado pelo professor Alex Fraga, tem estabelecido com a Rede Brasil-Canadá. Essa colaboração internacional trouxe frutos extremamente relevantes para a formação acadêmica e para o desenvolvimento do nosso programa, com destaque para um projeto financiado pela CAPES, que teve um impacto significativo em nossa formação de recursos humanos. O projeto resultou em diversas bolsas de mestrado, de doutorado, pós-doutorado e professores visitantes. Inclusive, é uma grande satisfação que, neste evento, tenhamos a presença da professora Denise Gastaldo, da Universidade de Toronto, que foi uma das contempladas com essa bolsa, e assim tivemos o prazer de tê-la ministrando disciplinas em nosso programa. Para finalizar, gostaria de ressaltar a grande relevância deste evento para o nosso programa de pós-graduação em Ciências do Movimento Humano. Ele não é apenas uma oportunidade de compartilhamento e discussão de estudos, mas também um momento de reafirmarmos nosso compromisso com a formação de excelência e com a internacionalização do nosso programa. A continuidade de ações como esta, que promove um intercâmbio de ideias, experiências entre instituições e pesquisadores, é fundamental para o fortalecimento de nossa área e para a construção de um conhecimento cada vez mais amplo e integrado. Espero que esse evento seja um marco para novas parcerias e para o desenvolvimento de ações que contribuam para o crescimento e a consolidação do nosso programa. Que possamos continuar, então, construindo juntos esse caminho, com mais oportunidades de aprendizado e de inovação. Muito obrigada e a todos um excelente evento.
Agradecemos a coordenadora, Caroline Pietro Dias. Com a palavra, o diretor da ESEFID da UFRGS, professor Rogério da Cunha Voser.
Boa noite a todos e a todas. Inicialmente, quero saudar o nosso vice-reitor. Obrigado pela tua presença aqui, é muito importante para nós. E, ao saudar o nosso vice-reitor, cumprimento toda a mesa. E descontrair um pouquinho aqui, já de início, né? O professor Alex, ontem, mandou uma mensagem à noite, né? Já me controlando a fala, porque eu me empolgo no microfone. Né? Dar um microfone ao professor é perigo. Né? Ele disse, Voser, nós só temos 3 minutos para cada um. Não te preocupe que 1 minuto eu vou resolver lá, não te preocupa. Então, né? Já perdi 30 segundos. Mas eu quero parabenizar, então, o professor Alex e também a Adriane Vieira. Professora Adriana, levanta a mão aí, professora Adriana Vieira, que são os coordenadores do POLIF, que é o nosso grupo de política de formação em educação física e saúde, do nosso programa de pós-graduação em ciências do movimento humano. Aqui nós temos um conceito 6, e estamos aí, né, Carol, lutando para a gente poder ir para o conceito 7. Então, esse evento aqui é muito importante também para nós alavancar nessas relações internacionais. Então, né, obrigado, Alex e Adriane, por oportunizar que a nossa escola possa, né, ter eventos dessa magnitude. Tenho a certeza que teremos um grandioso evento aqui, que vai nos trazer muitas reflexões, aprendizagens. Também colocar para vocês que eu também sou um professor pesquisador do nosso programa e trabalho na área do esporte, né, e todo o nosso grupo de estudo também tem estudado esporte na perspectiva qualitativa. Né? Recentemente, nós tivemos um aluno de mestrado que fez mestrado, fez doutorado, que é o Rodrigo Carlet, que é o analista de desempenho da seleção, e o atual campeão mundial, Marquinhos Xavier, que é o treinador da Seleção Brasileira de Futsal. Então, os dois com estudos qualitativos na área do esporte e vencedores também no campo prático. Né? Então, é importante também ressaltar a importância, né, dessa relação de estudos, né, qualitativos, aproximando, né, a academia do que é feito lá na prática, né, em loco. Então, nós tivemos, né, uma felicidade de o Marquinhos Xavier defender o doutorado dele e 20 dias depois embarcar para o Mundial e trazer o título para o Brasil. Então, são 2 alunos de destaque, né? O Carlet também foi aluno da graduação. Então, todos eles também fazendo estudos qualitativos. Então, tenho certeza que aqui, né, será um excelente evento com os convidados aí que estão na lista, né, de participantes. Então, não tenho dúvida nenhuma que nós vamos ter um grande evento e desejo a todos, então, um excelente trabalho nesses dias aí do evento. Tá bem? Boa noite a todos.
Obrigada ao diretor Rogério Vose. E passamos a palavra para o reitor adjunto de graduação da Universidade Federal de Ciências da Saúde de Porto Alegre, professor Rafael Maciel Cabaleiro.
Boa noite a todos e todas. Diferentemente do professor, eu vou me cronometrar, porque eu não tenho disciplina nem maturidade para respeitar o tempo. Então, primeiramente, eu quero agradecer, cumprimentando a mesa, né, a todos, em particular a professora Alex, né, a professora Adriane, pela disponibilidade, né, e investimento de promover um evento dessa maneira. Eu estou aqui representando a Universidade Federal de Ciências da Saúde, UFRGS, a impronunciável, que fica ao lado, co-irmã de instituição federal da UFRGS, mas uma universidade especializada na área da saúde. E posso dizer que, ao olhar aqui as pessoas envolvidas e reconhecendo várias pessoas de trajetórias qualitativas de contextos diferentes da minha vida, isso também mostra que nós somos praticamente um nicho dentro de um espaço de produção científica. E vindo de uma universidade exclusivamente um curso da área da saúde, posso dizer que esse nicho é, inclusive, menor quanto mais você adentra na área da saúde. Seja por uma questão de discussão de credibilidade, de rigor científico, ou mesmo de status, né, acadêmico em relação a isso. E acho que, talvez, eu fiquei pensando de que maneira eu poderia contribuir, além das falas que já foram colocadas, talvez uma delas é que esse processo que o professor Alex e a professora Adriane fazem em relação à relação da pesquisa qualitativa em saúde, mesmo estando situado num campus específico de uma universidade, se expande para a necessidade de outras universidades também olhar para isso. A gente tem professores e outras pessoas que circulam pelos eventos promovidos, justamente porque a gente não tem esse material interno na nossa universidade para produzir. Então, a gente percebe que os professores que trabalham com a discussão de pesquisa qualitativa acabam ficando ou isolados, porque não tem uma discussão compartilhada em relação a isso, ou buscam alternativas, às vezes, muito mais distantes. Então, a possibilidade de a gente ter uma parceria entre universidades próximas me parece ser relevante para isso, né? Acho que eu gostaria também de estender os agradecimentos em nome da nossa reitoria, porque a discussão de pesquisa qualitativa, nós fazemos uma certa brincadeira que na nossa universidade é como uma mesa de centro bonita, né? Todo mundo quer ter, mas ninguém sabe muito bem qual é a função. Então, a nossa reitoria gostaria de ampliar essa discussão, talvez aumentando a parceria, né, interinstitucional, mas, de certa maneira, como já tem isso acumulado, a gente entende que é uma parceria que a gente pode iniciar a partir desse evento ou em outras circunstâncias posteriores. Então, agradeço a disponibilidade de estar aqui presente e um bom evento para todos.
Agradecemos ao pró-reitor Rafael Cabaleiro e passamos a palavra para o vice-reitor da Universidade Federal do Rio Grande do Sul, Vossa Excelência Pedro de Almeida Costa.
Boa noite a todas as pessoas presentes, as pessoas que nos assistem também aí pela transmissão, né? Trago uma saudação minha e da professora Márcia Barbosa, reitora da nossa universidade, que está presidindo agora uma cerimônia de formatura nesse momento, né? Mas fez questão de mandar também a saudação dela, né? Queria parabenizar a organização do evento, né? E, nas palavras do professor Alex, né, a gente tem que ter demonstrado, né, Alex, depois das enchentes aqui, uma garra muito grande para conseguir manter, né, a vida acadêmica, científica dessa universidade de pé, como todas as outras atividades da sociedade gaúcha, né, marcada, né, por essa crise climática que nos abateu de uma forma muito dolorosa e que encontrou, né, políticas públicas frágeis e tratadas com baixíssimo grau de responsabilidade por autoridades, né, de nível municipal, estadual aqui, e que construiu, né, nesse casamento sinistro, né, a catástrofe que todos nós vivemos. Eu acho que nós, universidade pública, a gente tem uma missão fundamental que nesse congresso a gente vê que está se repetindo, né, de qualificação dos debates, de aprofundamento da pesquisa, né? Eu vi que o subtítulo do seminário fala de letramento científico, e isso em tempos em que a ciência está sendo atacada, em que a credibilidade das universidades, do conhecimento científico de uma maneira muito rasa e de uma maneira muito violenta, atacada por meios que não são meios científicos. Essa afirmação ela é muito importante, né? A nossa presencialidade física, em que pese, né, a facilidade que a tecnologia traz para ter outras pessoas aqui a um custo mais baixo, com outras possibilidades de superar desafios do deslocamento, essa presencialidade ela é muito importante, porque ela marca e ela reafirma, né, que a universidade pública precisa estar presente nos grandes debates desse país. né? Eu fico muito contente também como um pesquisador, não da área da saúde, né, mas trabalho com pesquisa qualitativa no campo da administração pública e da gestão social, e é com muita satisfação que a gente vê também esse esforço de construir, né, uma afirmação e de uma reputação da pesquisa qualitativa, que enfrenta, né, na sua co-irmã de quantitativa, né, alguns tipos de preconceito ainda, de rebaixamento e de hierarquização de saberes, que o exercício de seminários como esse ajudam a desfazer, porque né, o caminho da verdade, da ciência, da construção de conhecimentos, ela é extremamente importante. E fico muito contente também, né, de ser da área de ciências sociais aplicadas, também da onde eu venho, porque isso nos coloca também aquele papel que é fundamental e é central para a universidade pública, né? A gente tem reafirmado de uma maneira muito forte, muito contundente, que uma universidade pública só serve se ela estiver organizada e referenciada nas suas ações de ensino, pesquisa e extensão para os grandes problemas do nosso tempo, né? E um seminário como esse afirma isso. Saúde é uma questão fundamental para nós. Todas as políticas sociais, de uma maneira geral, são, num país dependente, num país, né, que sofre dentro dessas relações de força do capitalismo global, mais do que outros espaços também. Então, se a gente tem essa quantidade de questões sociais para enfrentar, a universidade, é evidente que ela não vai resolver sozinha, a ciência não vai resolver sozinha, mas a gente tem que cumprir o nosso papel é fundamental de colaborar nessas discussões e na construção de conhecimento que faça avançar as melhorias das condições de vida de uma maneira justa, equânime para todos e para todas as pessoas. Então, eu quero desejar 2 grandes dias de trabalho para vocês. Obrigado, né, aos colegas de fora que trazem, né, convidados e convidadas que vão presencial ou remotamente fazer parte desse momento, por fortalecer a ciência, fortalecer a nossa universidade, fortalecer a pesquisa qualitativa, e a gente deixa as boas-vindas e a nossa casa hoje da UFRGS é a casa de todos vocês, de todas vocês. Muito obrigado e um bom evento.
Obrigada, vice-reitor. Agradecemos as palavras e a presença de todos e todas que prestigiaram a cerimônia oficial do evento e convidamos os participantes para a conferência de abertura Letramento Científico em Nível de Doutorado, Premissas para a Construção de Competências para Pesquisadores Autônomos, que será originalmente proferida em língua inglesa, com tradução simultânea para português, às 19 horas, aqui mesmo, na Sala IP do Centro Cultural da UFRGS. E encerramos esta cerimônia de abertura com os votos de uma boa conferência.
Deu problema alguma coisa? Deu problema alguma coisa?
Pessoal, como a gente tem ainda uns 5 minutinhos até começar a conferência, só lembrando vocês que essa conferência vai ser a única conferência, eu vou abrir espaço para nossos hermanos, é a única conferência que será toda ela em inglês. não é muito simples fazer um evento que tem tradução simultânea, tem presencial, tem à distância e tem 2 canais do YouTube. Então, até alinhar todos os astros, a gente tem que aguardar aqui. A responsabilidade está maior ainda. Cadê o Ricardo? Já está transmitindo? Tá. Podemos começar? Pode começar. Ok. So, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the International Seminar on Education and Qualitative Research in Health, hosted at the Cultural Center of the Universidade Federal do Rio Grande do Sul, and funded by CAPES, the Brazilian funding agency. My name is Alex Branco Fraga, and I am a full professor at Universidade Federal do Rio Grande do Sul. It's my privilege to moderate tonight's opening conference. We are honored to welcome Dr. John Eakin, joining us via video conference, and Dr. Denise Gastaldo, who is with us in person. They will deliver the conference titled Practicing Soft Science, the Challenge of Scientific Literacy in Qualitative Health Research. Their presentation is based on the article Practicing Soft Science in the Field of Health, written specifically for this seminar and published last December in Movimental Journal as a target article in a controversial topics section, a special edition commemorating Movimental's 30th anniversary. It's my pleasure to introduce our first speaker, John Eakin. John Eakin is Professor Emerita at the Dalalana School of Public Health at the University of Toronto in Canada, where she spent most of her career before retirement. With an academic background in sociology, she taught at the graduate level and did research in the field of public health, focusing on the social and political dimensions of health, particularly work-related health. Throughout her academic life, John was deeply engaged in qualitative research methodology and its development and application within the health research field. She played a key role internationally in introducing the field of work and health to the value of qualitative forms of inquiry and worked with labor groups and government to advance research, action, and institutional change in prevention and disability. She was the founding director of the Center for Critical Qualitative Health Research, CQ, through which she has helped spawn a new generation of critical qualitative health researchers and has helped establishing ongoing institutional and scientific support for this form of inquiry. Since 2014, John Eakin's name has also been associated with a dissertation award, John Eakin Award for Methodological Excellence in a Qualitative Doctoral Dissertation. John Eakin, it's a very pleasure to have you here. Please, it's your time. Sorry. It's Denise Gastaldo starts. Sorry, John. So, Denise Gastaldo is an associate professor at the Bloomberg Faculty of Nursing and Education Coordinator at Center for Critical Qualitative Health Research, Dalalana School of Public Health, University of Toronto, Canada. Working with Dr. John Eakin, she was the founding associate director of the center, also known as CQ. She is also one of the founders of the Brasil-Canada Qualitative Health Research Network, established in 2017, and presently she is the co-coordinator of the Ibero-American Qualitative Health Research Network. Her empirical scholarship concentrates on the health consequences of social inequity, in particular migratory status as social determinant of health. As a methodologist, she has co-created with Dr. Lilian Magalhães, body map storytelling, and equity-oriented arts-based design that has been used in 40 countries. So, thank you very much, Denise. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you, Alex. It's a pleasure for us to be here, and I will explain how we are going to do this presentation. John and I have written the article and then this presentation based on the article, and we will alternate. So we are reading from the same text and we'll be alternating sections of the presentation. So in order to see, I need to take the glasses off. As you already know, we are talking about practicing soft science, the challenge of scientific literacy in qualitative health research. And we start this presentation with two quotes, one from Machado de Assis and another from Michel Foucault. As ocasiões fazem as revoluções. Where there is power, there is resistance. In this presentation, we reflect on strategies we have developed over the last 25 years as we work together as teachers of qualitative research at the postgraduate level. From now on, I will say graduate level. It means postgraduate, so that it's clear, it's Canadian English. In the field of health. John and I have started collaborating soon after I joined the University of Toronto, and the main outcome of our collaboration, as Alex has mentioned, was the establishment and development of the Center for Critical Qualitative Health Research, and we call it, as you already heard, CQ. CQ aims are to promote critical, equity-based, social theory-grounded health research through educating a new generation of qualitative researchers, developing the methodological field, and creating a supportive community of practice. In this presentation, we cover the content of the paper entitled Practicing Soft Sciences in the Field of Health, but at the end, we will raise some points in response to the 3 commentaries to our paper published last week in the Revista Movimento. It's an honor to be able to dialogue with these distinguished scholars, and their names are in the slide. And we want to thank the editor-in-chief, Dr. Alex Fraga, for the invitation to write an article to the section Controversial Topics. Our response to the commentaries will be published later this year. And I would like to invite John to start.
Boa noite a todos vocês que estão participando desta conferência online e pessoalmente em Porto Alegre. Estou muito feliz de participar deste Seminário Internacional. Obrigada e outros por me confidarem. Agora, vocês ficaram felizes em saber que está o fim do meu português.
Thank you, John.
It's an honor for me to be here, even on the screen and even in English.
Thank you. I will do the first part of the introduction and the comments on the limited literacy in qualitative science that we face. Coined in the 50s, the term scientific literacy refers broadly to what the general public ought to know about science, including an appreciation of the nature of science, its objectives, and its limitations. Scientific literacy is frequently associated with scientific education because it sets the foundation for informal and formal lifelong learning, the utilization of research methods, and the application of information. Unfortunately, a limited approach to scientific literacy has restricted it to notions of experiments and measurement, which has produced ignorance and prejudice against qualitative research. Together, ignorance and prejudice have created the possibilities for an understanding of a form of superior, hard science, and an inferior, soft science. Most academics in the health science who conduct qualitative research share the experience of having their work negatively impacted by the ignorance of peers and superiors who lack or have limited scientific literacy about qualitative research. They report regular encounters with academics, students, university managers, journalists, and policymakers who possess scientific literacy limited to the dominant understanding of hard science. Hence, when submitting projects for funding, presenting or publishing their work, qualitative researchers have the burden of explaining and justifying their qualitative designs, what is not required when publishing quantitative studies. The other problem qualitative researchers face, related to the lack of qualitative scientific literacy, is scientism. There are many definitions for scientism, but we are referring here to the idea that the neutral measurement methods of the natural sciences are the only proper way to produce knowledge, and that all other scientific methodologies are of a lesser standard, including part of the health sciences, the social sciences, and all qualitative approaches. As qualitative methodologies and methods do not adhere to the tenets of the scientific method for the natural and population-based sciences, for example, for bench and lab and epidemiological research, those who function from a position of prejudice render them inferior. The academic combo, ignorance and prejudice, that I'm calling scientism, created by limited qualitative scientific literacy, shapes everyday interactions in academic institutions, including evaluation, promotion, and competition for research funds. As Eking explains, qualitative health researchers share a sense of qualitative methodology as being misunderstood, misjudged, and regarded as scientifically inferior by other health researchers, and most would be familiar with the dismissal of their findings as anecdotal and biased, as inappropriate for explanatory or causal inference, and as good only for the preliminary exploration of variables or for subsequent measurement. It is widely believed, with some empirical evidence to support it, that qualitative health researchers are at funding, publication, and career disadvantage because of their methodological orientation. In the context of neoliberalism ignorance about qualitative research, and scientism, it is not surprising that so many of us have experienced multiple times the marginal status and lack of authority of qualitative research in the health sciences. These experiences are underscored by the dominant discourses of positivism and productivism in science that perpetuate the low prestige of soft sciences. In most Western countries, including Canada and Brazil, belief in the superiority of the hard sciences is rooted in the dominance of the positivist paradigm, reinforced by decades of academic productivism based on neoliberal principles. In a positivist, productivist academic environment, our science is soft because we reject the existence of a single paradigm for knowledge production. Soft because we argue that measurement is neither the only or necessarily best way to produce knowledge. And soft because we believe that reality, especially social reality, is highly contextual rather than reflecting a fixed, universal, factual state. Even though there has been a considerable increase in the utilization of qualitative research in the health sciences, and we must acknowledge that, and prestigious authors have affirmed that the lack of research methodologies that critically examine social structures, hierarchical practices, and cultural understandings is the single greatest barrier for achieving better health for all, the lack of understanding of the paradigmatic principles that guide qualitative research remains a challenge. Next, John and I will explore how to exit this loop of low status and how we have moved from individual to collective actions that embrace the periphery of power and construct soft science as a potent alternative to not only survive but thrive.
Long ago, in different faculties and at different stages in our careers, Denise and I found ourselves mutually struggling with our own graduate students to do thesis research in programs that offered nothing beyond introductory level qualitative methodology courses. Indeed, there weren't advanced courses anywhere in the university. We started by taking each other's students into a methodology class we were each teaching. And soon students from outside our faculties began enrolling in our courses. Over time, we gradually drew in a few other colleagues to teach other dimensions of qualitative research in a loosely organized teaching cooperative. This teaching arrangement became linked to a qualitative seminar series and researcher network that I had begun before Denise and I engaged in our educational collaboration. We just kept on adding new small and informal initiatives as need arose. Eventually, these various individual collaborations became more formally organized with the establishment of the Center for Critical Qualitative Health Research in the School of Public Health in 2009. This sounds straightforward and uneventful, but it wasn't. It was a bumpy and fraught and politically delicate operation. Our efforts to collectivize, organize, and institutionalize our teaching and research had three particular features. First, we refused to abandon the notion of qualitative research as a scientific form of knowledge production. Secondly, we asserted our roots in the social sciences and our commitment to critical forms of inquiry. And third, we worked as a group to support each other in our academic lives in the health sciences. So, we reject being dismissed as unscientific. We insist on conceiving our mode of research as science and embrace a motto of, quote, doing science differently. That is, we do science, but in a way that is different from most scientific practice in the health field. To understand health-related phenomena, we use qualitative methodologies grounded in social theory rather than positivist, numbers-based methodology grounded in disciplines other than the social sciences. Could you change the slide? Second, we lean towards critical perspective on health. Our general operating definition of critical refers to the capacity to inquire against the grain, to question the conceptual and theoretical bases of knowledge and method, to ask questions that go beyond prevailing assumptions and understandings, and to acknowledge the role of power and social position in health-related phenomena. Importantly, the notion includes self-critique, a critical posture vis-a-vis qualitative inquiry itself. A critical perspective contrasts with much health research and is not generally oriented to the socioeconomic and political dimensions of health and healthcare, or to notions of power. A third feature of our research is our determination to get beyond mere survival. We wanted to survive and thrive. To address our own research challenges, such as getting hired, funded, published, promoted, we built and maintained a collective of like-minded researchers who were originally scattered, isolated around the health sciences at the University of Toronto and affiliated research institutes. We developed an academic and a variety of outreach and advocacy projects aimed at promoting the careers of critical qualitative researchers. We published position papers about key issues for qualitative researchers' work, as the evaluation of qualitative research for academic promotion, and the impact of critical qualitative projects. We also took on editorships in several public health work and nursing journals. Once we had created and consolidated an interdisciplinary curriculum across the health sciences, we shared all course syllabi and educational videos that we had created for others to use, including a series of master's level videos translated to Portuguese. So these are three core features of our endeavors: a different way of doing science, a critical stance, and a quest to thrive within the health academy despite running against the grain. But it is one thing to declare such ambitions, and quite another to actually bring them about. We'll now tell you a bit more about how we tried, and to a large extent succeeded, in building a productive institutional place for qualitative researchers in the health sciences, which in turn, we believe, has produced significant new knowledge for the field. We have used two main strategies. First, we positioned our practice as potent, soft science. And second, we positioned critical qualitative research at the edge rather than at the center of the field.
Thank you, John. Now we are talking about critical qualitative research as a potent form of soft science. Like other science, qualitative research seeks to understand and explain the social world using theoretically and empirically grounded processes of systematic observation and interpretation. By refusing to cede the notion of science and claiming that critical qualitative research is also science, only done differently, from a distinct paradigmatic perspective, we engaged with the full potential of the scientific endeavor, that is, critique of exclusionary perspectives, reconceptualization of issues, identification of alternatives, and the transformation of science itself. Further, we don't use the notion of soft science in a derogatory way, but subvert its meaning to signal strength rather than weakness. We position critical qualitative research as a potent soft science, science that is capable of illuminating elements of health that are not accessible to the hard science. For instance, our soft quality refers to the understanding and critiquing social and political forces in health, social, biological, and human environmental interactions, the processes and functioning of therapeutic practices, and the everyday practices of healthcare organizations. The social dimensions of health implicate complex, invisible, and dynamic processes and causal mechanisms such as discourse, power, institutional relations, among others, that are not meaningfully measurable and that cannot be optimally captured or investigated through a numbers-based model of research. Critical qualitative research is a scientific methodology that invites the questioning of what is known, the development of new kinds of knowledge, and the creation of novel openings for change. Thus, subverting the negative notion of soft and positioning qualitative research as a potent soft science is the first strategy we have been using to claim institutional space for our kind of research in the field of health. The second strategy is to position critical qualitative research at the edges of the qualitative research field rather than at the center, as John will explain now.
So, as Denise has just said, this is our second strategy, and it's about positioning ourselves at the edges of the field rather than at the center. An image might help to convey this positioning. Imagine a river winding along with the water's main depth and force in the middle of a flow, while the water at the edges travels irregularly along the shoreline, flowing into eddies and side rivulets, sometimes eroding the boundaries of the river, changing its course. Now, I'm sorry to the translators, but this isn't in my text, but Denise's picture of this river looks like a nice, quiet Amazon, but I was thinking more of a wild Canadian river that twisted and turned and rolled over. But anyway, this is what Denise has put in here. But my image in my head is of a more violent, perhaps, river. So this is a metaphor for where we have placed critical qualitative research in the academy and in the qualitative field, at the cutting edge of the river, not in the mainstream. In the terms of qualitative research, this is meant focusing on the more transgressive, methodologically self-challenging edges of the field rather than on its generic, more easily accessed forms that are more accepted and understood in the health sciences, as is, for example, the descriptive study of patients' or caregivers' experiences without any connection to the structural conditions that shape such experiences. So to position qualitative research at the cutting edge in this way, we adopted 4 clear foci. The first foci is on methodology. The reason for this focus are several. Most centrally, at least initially, our rationale was that methodology provided a shared platform and language for bringing together those who share an understanding of knowledge production as an articulation between theory, values, and methods, and an understanding of the interconnection between the epistemological, axiological, and methodological dimensions of knowledge production. It also was a means to bring together researchers who were working in very different substantive topic areas. Methodology was a shared point of connection. A focus on methodology also helps to counter the tendency of health sciences of more mainstream positivist persuasion to see qualitative research as distinctive only in terms of methods, not methodology. That is, they see qualitative research being only about having different methods, different techniques for collecting data and representing findings, rather than having different underlying scientific philosophies about the nature of reality and knowledge. Framing qualitative research in methodological terms granted us some attention and credibility in the health sciences. And at the same time, a focus on methodology has been very important to the field of qualitative research itself, because generally, and especially in the health field, it has been insufficiently theorized methodologically. However, the emphasis on methodology does come with some risks. For example, we note the rise of interest in, quote, mixed methods, and what I and others consider to be the inappropriate methodological appropriation, even colonization, by positivist health researchers of the techniques of qualitative inquiry without their methodological and philosophical tethers.
Another focus we have adopted is demonstrating transformative critical qualitative research. A second element of our positioning strategy has been to place our feet where our mouths are, to actually produce, not just teach, not just advocate for, but to produce critical transformative research. As a collective, we try to demonstrate the value of this form of science rather than just claim it. By transformative, we mean capable of advancing the knowledge base and capable of bringing about meaningful change in thinking and practice related to health issues. We have emphasized being able to articulate and demonstrate explicitly how critical qualitative research is of relevance to researchers, healthcare users, policymakers, and practitioners. This is challenging to do convincingly. It requires an ability to elaborate on the applied value of qualitative research, especially of social science concepts and theory to produce critical inquiry. In our collective journey, transformative research was mainly organized under 3 forms of work. We had to get together and explain to each other how we were going to explain to the rest of the world what we were doing. And we picked methodological innovation, conceptual innovation, and knowledge mobilization as our 3 main strategies. Another focus we have developed over the years was a focus on advanced level education. A 3rd key positioning has been a focus on educating for advanced research capability, the next generation of qualitative researchers. That is, educating for critical, theoretically ground, social science informed, creative, added value research. I'm going to mention 2 examples of our former students who have been recognized for their work with awards to give you a sense of the kinds of works our students have developed. Astrid Pinol, for instance, has written the PhD thesis Salud, Dinero y Amor, in Spanish, as I said, Mexican women and their extended families confronting precarity in a Canadian agricultural labor migration program, where she works with mental health and migration in a very creative way with the entire family of the migrant worker. And now I have a problem. I will try to read in Inuktitut. I will say the translation in English. Learning to listen and be welcoming. Engaging Inuit perspectives on Timimut Ikajuksivik, this means rehabilitation services, for children in Nunavut, where Jenna McLachlan has worked with Indigenous Canadians to think differently about how to offer rehabilitation services that were meaningful for that community. But this focus, too, comes with some risks. We have been accused of being elitist and of excluding mainstream qualitative researchers who use a positivist understanding of science or reduce qualitative research to methods for description and very little interpretation. Also, by concentrating our limited resources on advanced level graduate education, we have struggled to resist the pressure to take on more teaching at introductory and less theory-centered levels, in part because it would consume all our energies and not lead to the production of the next generation of highly prepared researchers who will be teachers and supervisors in the future. Even though the demand for qualitative education in the health science is increasing, and we would like to prepare students earlier for critical qualitative research, we have been careful not to overcommit. Again, we have bet on quality rather than quantity. We can affirm this strategy has been successful given the number of former students employed in academic positions nowadays who produce transformative research and teach qualitative health research across not only Canada, but several countries.
A final strategic focus was to limit the integration of qualitative research into the dominant mode of health research and to retain and capitalize on its location at the margins of the field. Despite efforts to gain recognition and acceptance from mainstream health science research, critical qualitative research remains marginal to the prevailing research paradigm in the health sciences. This outsider status stems from the many structural and contextual factors that we've touched upon in the paper, but it also reflects our deliberate balancing of integration with marginality. We have sought recognition and respect more than normalization and incorporation into the clan. We have eschewed joining in the mainstream in favor of retaining our role and status at the edges. Thus, we have resisted the colonizing effects of mixed methods, semi-positivist models of qualitative research, and the lure of quick and light qualitative analysis to hasten research production. We believe that too deep integration into dominant health science practices would require sacrificing too much of the value of our creative scientific potential. Although marginal status in the health research enterprise may be deeply irritating, we need to resist the urge to moan relentlessly about it, and instead to spend our time maximizing the value of what we do. We propose that such marginality fuels our vitality and creativity, and that too much comfort and acceptance can undermine the capacity for critical insight. This positioning, however, is a paradoxical affair. Qualitative research needs acceptance and authority to survive in the health research field, but it paradoxically needs outsider status and the methodological autonomy and authority to practice our research craft at its best. Balancing and reconciling these competing needs has been key to our ongoing success. In summary, then, we have shared with you some of our personal and collective experience challenging and changing the research environment in the health field to make productive space for critical qualitative inquiry and education. Our strategic positioning includes the centering of qualitative methodology, the subversive embrace of the derogatory label of soft science, and maximizing the value of a marginal location in the scientific field of play. However, a note of caution for our audience. All this is a lot easier said than done. Our personal and collective trajectories have been invigorating, but not always comfortable or easy. It is hard to be soft. And there is tension between trying simultaneously to be inside and outside. The best positioning of critical qualitative research will vary enormously in different national, institutional, and academic settings. We pass the torch to those of you tempted to take up the challenge in your own academic settings and hope that you will report on your experiences so we can pool a broader set of experiences and grow our knowledge of the contingencies of practicing research against the grain. So this is the end of the paper that we have written. But as Denise said at the beginning, we would like now to make a few responses to some of the comments of our three very thoughtful reviewers. I will start by responding to two comments in particular that stirred our thinking. First was the interesting remark that the word soft might not be the best word to use in relation to a different science because it has negative connotations in many linguistic and cultural communities. We, at the moment anyway, stay committed to using the term because the negative meaning, weak, inferior, is precisely the meaning directed at qualitative research from the mainstream health sciences. Rather than indignant pushback or relinquishing the claim to being a science. We chose to keep and subvert the term, much as the word queer has been taken up as a signal of defiance and identity reaffirmation by the gender diverse community, or as mad studies has been taken up by some mental health researchers. We keep the term and repurpose it as a strength rather than as a weakness. We are indeed soft, but soft in the sense of being a science that is adaptable, changeable, flexible, and capable of creating new knowledge in the context-dependent, invisible, immaterial, unmeasurable elements of the health world. The second clarification we wish to make concerns questions raised about our relationship to other sciences, positivist, biological, and about our lean towards an elitist, exclusionary posture. We are asked, what about complementarity and interdisciplinarity and inclusion and finding common ground? Should we be less combative and avoid being engaged in, quote, gladiator scholarship? Our response is that our elitism and non-inclusiveness is not with respect to other sciences. We believe that different kinds of approaches are needed for understanding different aspects of the world, and that the natural and biological sciences, for example, have an important and rightful place in the health sciences. We would never argue, for example, that qualitative methods should be used rather than a randomized clinical trial to determine the effectiveness of drug treatment. Rather, our distancing is from others in the qualitative health research field who practice qualitative light research and other forms of positivist qualitative inquiry, including some mixed methods research that is not qualitatively driven. Many of these approaches, in our view, are not able to achieve the potential we believe critical qualitative inquiry is capable of. To include them would divert energy and resources and dilute our claim to new thinking in health. Elitist, too purist, not collaborative enough, not in the best interests of the broader scientific endeavor as a whole? Maybe, but our reasoning is that the distribution of power and authority is not equally distributed between differing health sciences, nor is this a level playing field where, by and large, scientists are open, sharing, and seeking to expand the scope of scientific understanding. In the health sciences, in a research-intensive university like ours, if you aren't at the table, you are probably on the menu, as the saying goes. To claim a spot at the table, we had to gain legitimacy in the terms set by the dominant players. To get such legitimacy and presence at the table, we had to compromise, and we had to be selective in who joined the collective, and to be more assertive than a complementarity model of science might applaud. It has been a delicate political balancing act where we tried to compromise without selling our souls and our value to the devil. Now, Denise will make a final comment on these reviews.
Thank you. A final point we appreciated in the commentaries was the invitation to think about what is the science that the world needs today. If anyone was distracted, in the last decade, we have seen the intensification of the effects of climate change across the globe, including in Porto Alegre, where we stand today. The COVID-19 pandemic, the rise of authoritarian far-right ideologies, and many of us engaged in an ever-ending fight to maintain publicly funded national healthcare systems here and in Canada. As the number of billionaires increases around the globe, so does social and health inequities within countries and across countries. In the final phase of his work, Paulo Freire formulated an overt critique to hegemonic neoliberal globalization. He also proposed the need for groups to develop critical hope to dream alternatives to today's world. We understand scientific knowledge production is a slow, systematic, and limited process, many times a frustrating one. But we invite you to consider what are the critical, transformative, context-specific, soft, qualitative health research studies needed today, and how to educate the next generation of researchers. And now it's time for your comments and questions. We want these two questions to be open for to start opening for our conversation. We thank you and obrigada.
Thank you very much, Denise and John. We decided to work in the following way. 3 questions from the audience, in-person audience. Uma. Denise. Ah, já fez.
Does it come from you? Is it through the Rede? Or is it? Okay, got it. John, Claudia has asked, what are the key methodologies used in soft science to ensure the reliability and validity of qualitative research findings? And how do these approaches differ from hard science? This is an impossible question. It will take us a few days to answer, so.
I think it's better to
Go ahead.
to pick up 2 more and 3 in a row. I guess it's better because we don't have much. Huh?
They're coming. But
Okay.
people in the room
So,
can ask.
okay. Anyone from the in-person audience, would you like to ask?
In Portuguese.
In Portuguese. In Spanish as well?
Yes, I can Spanish or Portuguese.
Então, acho que a gente pode. So,
Can you see the other one?
yeah.
How can empirical Yes, John, I'm going to read it for you. How can empirical research based on case studies approaching human subjectivity in a singular way gain visibility in leading journals that tend to favor more concrete qualitative methods? Would you like to comment on that?
Could you say it again, Denise? I'm so sorry. It's very difficult for me to hear what that question was. Can you say it again?
Yes. How can empirical research based on case studies approaching human subjectivity gain visibility in leading journals that tend to favor more concrete, what you and I call descriptive, qualitative methods. Lillian has sent you the screenshot to your cell phone. Okay, I think John can hear us very well.
So the question is, what the problem that journals, and it's hard to get published, things that aren't descriptive studies. That look more like what regular health sciences are used to seeing. Is that the question? Like, how do you get this kind of work published?
Yes, it is.
Well, for a start, the most important thing is to choose your journals carefully before you submit, and find out if there's any possibility for them being interested in more theorized work, and work that actually takes a critical perspective on the way things are thought about. So you have to choose your journal carefully. Secondly, for one thing, we have tried to have, had several of us have been editors of journals to try to change the publication practices of journals and to make them understand. And one of the challenges from a point of view of an editor is that there's a lot of very mediocre qualitative research out there. And it gets submitted all over the place. Everyone thinks they can do a little qualitative this and a little qualitative that, and submit it for publication. And so it's actually quite difficult as an editor to get good quality qualitative research. So watch for the editors, and also you have to write in a way that is comprehensible to the audience that you're writing to. You have to know who you're writing to, and you have to write to that, and you have to translate what you have found in whatever terms that you're presenting it, in whatever kind of conceptual framework that you have developed. You have to write it for those who are reading it. And so that's extremely important. And when you do that, I have found that people are very receptive to theorized work because it elevates findings beyond just the empirical observations, and it finds more abstract generalizations that can be taken beyond the study, the empirical study that you are describing, and can be used by other people by virtue of its theoretical generalizability. And so, in fact, good quality qualitative research done well, written with the audience in mind, can be very, very well received.
I just would like to add that John is the former editor for qualitative research in the Canadian Journal of Public Health, and she has changed the journal considerably to make what we are calling here critical qualitative research to be much more easily accepted and valued by the journal. So she is speaking from her editorship experience. I will go back briefly to the question that Claudia has asked, and I said it was impossible to answer, and I picked one element of it to address. She has asked, what are the methodologies used in what we are calling soft sciences? So just to clarify our point, what we are saying is we are being provocative, calling qualitative research a soft science, number one. Number two, we are saying that because qualitative research has certain features such as emergent design, responsive to participants' needs, context-specific, it exhibits lots of flexibility. And that allows for particular kinds of knowledge production that go beyond measurement. So that's the main argument we have raised. So at CQ, we have developed new methodologies based on these ideas so that we are producing better, what we consider better, more transformative knowledge that get to what the healthcare system needs to hear, what policymakers claim they don't know. So it's knowledge production aiming at transformation and taking all the advantage of the flexibility the qualitative methods have in being shaped to better respond. For instance, Lillian and I have developed a methodology called body map storytelling. I will say the name in Portuguese now, mapas corporais narrados. And we have done that because we realized interviews were insufficient to talk to undocumented workers in Canada. So we needed to go back to the drawing board and figure out a way to help participants to express themselves. So we produced better knowledge because participants could better engage with their experiences through arts and narrative. So that's an example of a methodology that has been used using this kind of mentality.
Could I add something?
Of
Could
course.
I add something, Denise, to what you've just said? When you talk about methodologies, what you've described, your particular example there is one example. Another example is developing ways of hearing and understanding what isn't there. And that's a little hard for empirical research to imagine, but what does silence mean? What is not said? And how can we understand what is not said and what it means? So we have developed ways of thinking about and understanding and interpreting things that, you know, are not visibly right there in front of you that you can count or you can measure or you can actually put on a piece of paper. Many things in qualitative research are intangible. They're not even there, and yet they're extremely important. And so we have developed ways of thinking about the way we collect data, our data, and we include everything as data, not just the words on a transcript, but we include everything and develop ways of incorporating all these kind of data into an interpretation. So that's what I would offer as examples of developing methodologies to do what we want them to do.
Thank you, John. I will read two more questions now. One is a very, very astute comment. I didn't see the name of the author, but they say whether to reiterate the dichotomic logic of soft and hard. By doing that, aren't we creating a problem? And we should be trying to overcome the dichotomy, the binaries in science to produce new knowledge. So that's an excellent provocation. Thank you. And the other one is how critical qualitative researchers should confront power differences in graduate departments. I don't know if you'd like to start.
Could you say that again, Denise? How to?
I think either go to the front of the computer, right?
I think it's better for the audience.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
So could you go there and repeat, or do I go? John, give me a second. I will speak in front of the computer.
I can hear you better now, yes.
So I'll repeat. The first one was, aren't we reiterating the logic, the dichotomic logic that we should be trying to overcome by creating the division between the polarization, division between hard and soft? So aren't we part of the problem, in other words? And the other one is how critical qualitative researchers should confront power differences in graduate departments.
Well, the first, well, these are toughies, but, you know, for one thing, our using of the term soft science was more a rhetorical ploy than it is a kind of deep-seated classification of ourselves. So I don't think I really don't think that we are unreceptive to bridging the distance between so-called soft and hard sciences, or between different ideas. In fact, we cross disciplinary boundaries all over the place, because many people practicing qualitative research come from different disciplinary and professional backgrounds. So there's bridges being crossed there all the time between theoretical work, between practical applied work is very important to us, and we bridge those all the time. And we are absolutely open to considering epistemological and other considerations in thinking about forms of research. So I don't think the hard soft is something we live by. It was a kind of, I guess, a kind of a word trick to try to, throw back a term that is being thrown at us as being soft. And so I don't think more of it should be made than that. I absolutely agree that as scientists, we should be trying to include and speak to and be heard by other kinds of scientists and other forms of science, including ourselves. We have to think about the limitations to the way we see the world and the value of other ways of seeing it. I completely agree with that. As for the second one, how to confront power in graduate, do you mean power towards the administration or others, or other scientists in the department? Is that what is meant?
Yeah. Vamos ver se ela me vê.
Yes.
Yes,
well,
John.
For one thing, it takes patience, it takes determination, it takes quiet diplomacy, it takes a kind of I wouldn't want to say it's deceptive, but sometimes it's necessary to go along with the flow, but in fact, you just continue to do what you want to do, because it's impossible to explain something to really get it. So sometimes you just have to ignore some of these things if you can, and just carry on with what you believe in. The power is always going to be there. And we have, Denise and myself, in two different departments, very different, have experienced a quite different form of coercion and disregard in our departments. But it is possible to provoke it. I retired as a full professor. I did manage to survive in this research-intensive university in a medical place. I'm a sociologist doing qualitative research. I did survive, but it requires diplomacy and and quiet support and making your case convincingly, always working on how to better explain what you're doing. It took me years to figure out what was I doing? How do I explain myself to people who haven't a clue really what you're doing? And so it takes a while to develop the way of speaking to others that meets them in a place that they can understand and that doesn't threaten them. I think sometimes power situations come up because people feel threatened in some way. And so you have to understand who you're speaking to and in what way they may feel threatened by what you're saying, and to develop ways of fitting in enough to be accepted so that you can do what you want to do without compromising too much.
Thank you, John. I will just tell a brief story. When CQ was being created at the School of Public Health, we faced a lot of opposition. And some of the people who supported us were statisticians and people in epidemiology, because they shared critical thinking and critical social theories with us. So epistemologically, methodologically, we're radically different, but epistemologically, they could understand where we were coming from. So one person said to a colleague of ours, one statistician said, why are they complaining that the center is called Center for Critical Qualitative Health Research? What they want, a center for basic qualitative research? Why the complaint? So some people from different methodological field had no problem and really could understand that we're talking about excellence, about advancement, and were very supportive. We had another, Paula has asked about how to do this kind of teaching at the master's programs. At the University of Toronto, we have students at the master's and PhD who study critical qualitative health research because they have some level of training in social science, as well as research methodology, because you need the social science to think the way we do. But in the professional programs is where it is harder. And in Brazil, people are moving more and more towards professional programs. Master's programs where people get in 1 year their entire training. So that remains a challenge for us too, but people who are doing academic programs and who are doing like 1.5 years or 2 years of masters have had training in critical qualitative research. It's doable and it's part of our curriculum.
John, could you hear? No?
I support what Denise said. It's there's master's students who do theses, and there are master's students and programs that do not do theses. And there's been a rising interest in qualitative research over the years. There's really the demand for introduction to qualitative research, knowing how to do it, has been very intense. And it's been very intense among people who aren't in fully research programs, who aren't themselves going to do much research. And it's very challenging to do that. Rather than teaching the methodology in depth, in my view, it's better to teach, to follow through a few really strong qualitative studies so that they get an idea of what kind of a difference they make, what kind of different information they offer on things, different perspective, what can be got from qualitative research, how perhaps to read qualitative research, to understand it, to appreciate what is involved in it is very important, particularly for those who aren't going to be actually doing master's level research themselves.
Thank you, John. I will just mention one thing that we had in the question of power difference in graduate departments. The part of the question depends whether you are a student or a professor in the department. And the answer, I think, in our presentation has been, don't do it alone, never, ever. You need a group. Our ways, our strategies for creating spaces for critical qualitative research to happen in the health science were always collective. We work together, like many of us. CQ has 22 fellows. We are all academics at the university, most at the University of Toronto. So the idea that you can individually overcome these power imbalances, for me, it's naive. I think the main issue here is get organized, work with others. And we started as 2, and now we are a much larger group, right?
I really support what Denise just said. It's really important not to try to do it alone. And sometimes you'll find yourself on master's theses where people, invite you onto, not masters, on theses, where people invite you onto the thesis committee because you're the, quote, qualitative person. And there you're quite alone, and it can be quite challenging because usually you end up really running the entire project and supervising the student, not as a committee member, but as a supervisor, which is a very awkward and difficult position. So there are many, many challenges in the supervision and education of graduate students.
Anyone? In Portuguese, the last but not the least. Tem mais alguma?
No, that one I didn't
no.
see. Okay, Lillian has asked John about the impact of artificial intelligence in qualitative research. This is a topic we're talking a lot about currently at CQ. Next month, we have a meeting on writing with AI qualitative research. And we have been, over the last 2 years, talking about it. There is a call for a special number of a journal in North America on AI and qualitative research. Right now, you can submit until, I think, July. They are calling for submissions. But from the publications that are out there, there is some consensus that these are early days, and the work that AI has been doing with the researcher, like supporting the researcher, is still quite limited. And the main achievements are working with creating summaries, something more of a, basic level of contribution. Obviously, it will change dramatically, but we are not there yet. That's in a nutshell what we have experienced so far.
And I think
ahead.
that in relation to artificial intelligence, that is a very important subject for qualitative researchers to study, because this is a major change that's happening across all fields, all domains, and so it's a prime magnet for qualitative investigation.
John, would you like to give us your final words?
Sorry, Alec, what did you say?
Would you like to give us the final words?
There is no final word. There is no final word in the field of qualitative
I know, just for
research,
this conference,
sure.
of course.
As all research that is
Would you like you keep in talk a lot?
One offering is, and so Denise and I have made an offering of an interpretation, really, of the role of qualitative research in the health sciences, its place, its possibilities, its challenges. It comes from our experiences, and it comes from a particular place in the universe here. So as all research, qualitative research, it is an interpretation that hopefully offers insight and value to our understanding.
Thank you, John. I just would like to say that when John and I wrote this paper, our main concern is to make sure the reader understands what we have done is just one attempt among many. There is fabulous critical qualitative research being conducted in Mexico, in Peru, in Argentina, in Chile, in Colombia, like in Uruguay, I can go on, and in Spain and Portugal. Like, there is so much out there in Portuguese, in Spanish, and in English. And we are referring to CQ because we had this experience and we collaborate regularly with Brazil. But there is so much you can look to and explore. That's number one. Number two, the CQ model works at a research-intensive university in Canada. It doesn't mean it would work in other places of the world. It's context-specific. So in no way we are saying there is a recipe here. We are saying here is a case of a successful 25-year production of knowledge and the education of the next generation of qualitative researchers. But there are many other ways of doing that, right? And we are inviting you to start thinking about that. Tomorrow and Friday, you'll see some slides where we are going to share with you conferences about qualitative research and events and awards that we have put together to keep those of you who are attending here and from home about new possibilities for the development of people's students and academics' careers. Thank you for the invitation, Alex.
Could I say one more thing?
Of course. Sorry for the final words in the last intervention.
That in Germany, there is a publication, FQS, I think it's called, FQS. It's a journal, a publication that has, it represents a lot of different international perspectives on qualitative research, because it's translated into, it operates in multiple languages, and it has sections of it that deal with conferences. Maybe, for example, this seminar, maybe that should be put in there, or for sure, now that I'm thinking about it, I hadn't thought about it till now, but that is certainly a place for Brazilians and others to look for other non-Canadian experiences with qualitative research. And it certainly is happening in Europe, in many places, in Britain, all over Britain. So keep your eyes open for other models of how it can be done, because we are just one, as Denise says.
So, to wrap up, thank you very much for John Wicken, for your commitment, for accepting our invitation, for working in this project. John Wicken, when we were preparing this conference, said that is the first time, if I'm not wrong, John, that I have an article published in Portuguese. So, one of the, and as an editor of Movimento Journal, it's a big honor to have an article published, written by Denise and John Wicken. And the other 3 commentaries articles as well, published last week, are available in 2 languages as well, in English and Portuguese, and one of them in Spanish and Portuguese. And that is one of the challenges that we have in qualitative research as well, the barrier of language. So it's very hard, it's very challenging to organize a seminar like that when you have Spanish, English, and Portuguese in the audience and in the video conference. And this is one of the things that we need to work hard to avoid one of the concepts that I'd like to use, the ethnic cost to write in a language that it's not your native language. So thank you very much, John. Thank you very much, Denise, and hope this is the first seminar in this way that we made, and probably we can do another one in 2 or 3 years with another coordinator. Thank you. Thank you, Vilney, for the translation. Excellent translation. I received a lot of compliments for your translation. And for the audience, thank you very much for your presence.
Thank you for being here with us.
Thank you for being here with us, and it's done. Cerramos.